Let's talk about something not as salacious as yesterday, but something I would argue that is way more important. It is about the U.S. prison system. Oh, what a great system it is. Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed. Now, if I were to ask you a question of how much production value do you think that prison workers in America produce? Would you guess 500 million? Maybe 800 million? Maybe on the high end of $1 billion? Well, all of that would be wrong. I mean, you looked at the title, you already know this answer. I don't know why I even asked, but it is $11 billion worth of goods and services every year. And the best part, if you are an absolute ghoul in the top upper hierarchy of the prison system, is these people barely get paid at all. Now, there is a very good a very good write-up by The Guardian here. Let's scroll down and take a look at it. There is a lot that I highlighted because this is very important. Incarcerated workers in the U.S. produce at least $11 billion in goods and services annually, but receive just pennies an hour in wages for their prison jobs, according to a new report from the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Nearly two-thirds of all prisoners in the U.S., which imprisons more of its population than any other country in the world, have jobs in state and federal prisons. That figure amounts to roughly 800,000 people, researchers estimated in the report, which is based on extensive public records requests, questionnaires, and interviews with incarcerated workers. ACLU researchers say the findings outlined in Wednesday's report raise concerns about the systematic exploitation of prisoners who are compelled to work sometimes difficult and dangerous jobs without basic labor protections and little or no training while making close to nothing. State governments and the prison system are extracting tremendous value from a captive and exploited workforce, all while claiming they can't afford to pay them a livable wage, said Jennifer Turner, the author of the report. More than 80% of incarcerated laborers do general prison maintenance, including cleaning, cooking, repair work, laundry, and other essential services. For non-paid industry jobs, workers make an average of 13 cents to 52 cents an hour, according to the report. 7 states, Alabama, good old Alabama, you already know my state made the list. Of course, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas pay nothing for the vast majority of prison work. Now, here is where it gets really, you're going to see how screwed up things get when it comes to prison labor in the country, because we have absolute ghouls who run it, who know that they are making a killing, and they are also saving money by making these people basically do slave labor. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's slave labor. Here's a quote from one of the prisoners, an inmate. "We are saving the prison millions of dollars and getting paid pennies in return. All the jobs we are doing in prison are not really benefiting us. It is more benefiting the prison system. I work a job making $450 for a whole year," said Letitia Millender, who is a prisoner at a prison, of course, in Illinois. And here is a commissioner. Now, we're going to skip the red part right now, but I want to get to that separately. There's no way we can take care of our facilities, our roads, our ditches, if we didn't have inmate labor. Warren Yeager, a former Gulf County, Florida commissioner, said, to the Florida Times Union. So get this. This is one of the major issues with these for-profit prisons that just absolutely need to go away, because at this point you have prisoners who are subsidizing uh, these commissioners and building prisons to work in that they get nothing out of, that the people at the top take all the money and run with it. And if you do not believe me, here is proof coming out of their own mouth. I put it in the red because it is especially egregious. Other officials said that they oppose new sentencing and parole laws that would reduce the pool of incarcerated workers, according to the report. Stephen Prater, a Louisiana sheriff, said, quote, "We need to keep some out there," meaning that he wants to keep people in prison, not out there outside of prison, but he wants to keep them in the metal fences. That's the ones that you can work, that pick up trash, that work release program. But guess what? Those are the ones they releasing. The good ones. The ones that we can use to wash cars. Cars? Whose cars are they washing? Are they washing cars to pick up more of the inmates so that they can continue the slave labor? Probably so. Change oil in our cars, to cook in the kitchen, to do all that we can to save money. Well, we're going to let them out. So get this here, right? So these guys, who I have no doubt in my mind that some of these guys are probably really wealthy, buying out politicians to make it so that people stay longer in prison so that they can continue to do slave labor to make these people money and to keep them in business, essentially. Because for them, prisons is another form of business, and their employees are these prisoners. And we're going to get to these prisoners in a second. But this is especially crazy and egregious, but, somehow in America, not too surprising. More than 75% of workers told ACLU researchers if they can't work or decline to do so, they are subject to punishment ranging from solitary confinement to the loss of family visits to denials of sentence reductions. So literal forcing them. This isn't, you do this if you want to. And even though it is egregious, we'll throw you a little bit of something. This is straight up, okay, we're going to make you do this. And if you don't do it, we are going to make sure that you stay in prison longer. So if you don't want to go out here and wash my car, well, you might just have an extra year, bucko. And it is completely insane. Incarcerated workers are stripped of even the most minimal protections against labor exploitation and abuse. They are paid pennies for their work, and they often work in unsafe working conditions. And they produce billions and billions and billions of dollars for the states and federal government. So they're just not making money for the private prisons. They're also making money for their own government, which have a bunch of politicians who are completely bought out by these private prisons, and even some of these federal prisons as well. Some of these people in jail and prison, it is an absolute racket. These people are making a killing off these slave labor. Now, I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, are we really going to moralize these mad murderers, these people who are killers, blah, 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 the normal stuff? Because people have a hard time trying to, feel anything towards people who are in prison, because a lot of the times they are seen as completely morally inferior, throws them to the trash heap, whatever happens to them. But let's look at the offenses that a lot of these inmates make. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up right now. Now, take a guess which has the most percentage of inmates. Is it violent crime? Is it immigration? Is it sex offenses? Is it weapons? No, it's not. It's actually, of course, it's the drugs. It's the drugs. uh, 44.9%, almost 45%, almost nearly half of the population of inmates are on drug offenses. So you have a bunch of people who probably went out, they went to the drug dealer on the side because in the freest country, supposedly the freest country in the nation, I mean, in the world, I mean, the freest country in the world, some guy probably did some marijuana, you know, trying to get some of that good stuff. Maybe if they're really on a high, maybe they had some powder and some cocaine and they got pulled over, or they got caught in a sting operation and they landed in prison where they now are subjected to forced labor. And we also have to realize a lot of these people aren't even guilty all the time, because you do have that percentage of the population who are completely innocent. And for the people who are just not looking at the video, I can go down and read it all. Banking insurance, 0.1%. Burglary, larceny, property offenses, 4.9%. Criminal enterprise, 0.2%. Courts and corrections, 0.4%. Here we go. Drug offenses, once again, 44.9%. Extortion, fraud, bribery, 4.6%. Homicide, aggravated assault, kidnapping offenses. So basically murder, assault, and all of that stuff, 3.1%. So these like rabid murderers, 3.1%. Immigration, 4.8%. So you have people who are trying to come over to America. They get caught, swept up by ICE, denied the right to seek asylum, which is kind of violating, which is violating international law and the UN. 4.8%. Miscellaneous, whatever that might mean. 0.6%. National security, 0.0%, even though there are 34 inmates for that. Robbery, 2.9%. Sex offenses, 11.6%. Weapons, explosives, and arson, 21.3%. So by a large percentage, drug offenses is the most common way in America to end up in prison, where they will then turn you basically into a slave. And if you don't like it, they can extend your stay in prison, and there's really not much you can do about it, because at that point, either the private prison system or the federal prison system owns you. And especially if you're somebody in poverty, there's not much you can do about it, and you are absolutely screwed. Now, I'll end this video on some prison labor facts worldwide that regards the United States. So the United Nations, they have guidelines on how to treat inmates, and they call it the Nelson Mandela rules. They say that prisoners should not be held in slavery and deserve a fair wage and decent work conditions. The U.S. has failed to do that. The United States and China have the world's largest prison populations, estimated at 2.1 million and 1.65 million respectively. So in a country like the US, where we have 300 million people roughly, versus a country that has billions of people, a billion people, we are still somehow competing with prison populations in the freest country in the world. And both the US and China house the biggest jail labor systems. And US inmates are often paid less than $1 an hour for work, be it making clothes or fighting fires. Yes, they even fight fires. Prisoners staged a strike in 2018 demanding the minimum wage and better conditions, which ultimately failed. And major brands, the brands that everybody knows about, including IBM, department store JCPenney, and of course, Victoria's Secret also used prison labor. So, what is Victoria's Secret? Well, all along, it was the classic slavery.